Well, hi there, NHL community. I've decided to make a hockey-orientated video today. It's been a little while since I've done that. I'm going to try and get back into this sort of YouTube video style. It tends to get more positive results. Anyway, the issue I wanted to tackle today was, do NHL players cheat to be able to perform better? Because in the news you'll quite hear that often that there are some doping concerns, mostly in regards to the Russians and mostly orientated towards the Olympics. But I think that's where the line becomes a little more vague. It's a little more gray, because in my opinion, I believe in some form or another almost all NHL players, they take supplements of some kind. I'm not going to go so far as to say they're steroids. There are plenty of supplements that are available that are perfectly legal. What made me want to talk about this subject was I saw an advert saying the dark history of the NHL, and it cropped up in one of my forums and then disappeared. But it was an interesting read, and it was basically saying that, yeah, even guys like Sidney Crosby take Muscle Max type products, and I actually Google searched that as well, and you know, it takes you the first couple of search results take you to pages where there's, you know, supplements with similar kind of names. And they make promises like you'll lose weight, gain muscle, and be able to perform better. There's all kinds like that. I'm making this video because I think that's an important subject in the NHL, and from my point of view, I don't know firsthand, and I'm never going to find out, because that's just the way it is. I don't agree with it. However, you know, NHL players usually are expected to play 82 games a year, and you know, it's not easy for them. And there are some what people would call life hacks that they have the hindsight of knowing that players in previous generations didn't know. You know, 40, 30 years ago, a lot of hockey players were told to just suck it up, just keep playing and keep playing, and it didn't matter about certain things, and they end up you know, worse off. Well, I can't really think of a specific supplement that they could be taking, and so I'm just gonna, you know, say we'll call it Muscle Max, because the reality is we don't really know. They're definitely cheating somehow. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. I'm not saying it's like you know, Rocky versus the Russian, and the Russian's this big giant monster. I'm not saying it's like that, but they definitely are able to perform a little bit better than regular players. Now, don't get me wrong, they do things that enable them to do that. That, you know, that's part of the game. You know, they train almost every day. They've been playing hockey since they were little. They know the science and physics behind hockey because they're taught all that sort of stuff. But there are things that you know, I guess didn't exist before, like I don't know, like anti-itch powder. There's a lot of positions, particularly goalies, where they cannot afford to have an itchy spot pretty much anywhere on their body. It's bad form in front of the camera, and not only that, it's inconvenient during gameplay. So the most definitely they have some sort of a spray for that sort of thing. And I have a theory that when you see NHL teams, you know, suiting up and walking out the door, presumably to start the game, you know, or the ceremony or the national anthem or whatever, I think that is rehearsed beforehand. I think a couple hours before they open the doors to let fans in, I think they film what they want to show, you know, typical things like goalies, you know, putting on their pads and players taping their sticks, and, you know, there isn't much way of knowing once they're stepping out onto the ice, you know, when they got their full equipment on, especially if they're, you know, trained to each one be exactly where he should be at that time. They could have filmed that sequence earlier in the day because there are, you know, pre-game prep things they don't want you to see. And one of them might be, you know, spraying anti-itch stuff, because that's pretty important. There are other things too, like a lot of them have superstitions and things like that. And very little, you know, from, I guess the poor man seats on the subject is known about it. But yeah, they have, you know, their whatevers. But anyway, you know, getting back into the whole subject of the muscle max thing, it's not illegal for some reason. I don't know exactly why. I know a lot of these sort of supplements, things like that, at very least don't work, or they have something very negative about them. The thing is, the ones your average day idiot would see on, you know, like a Popeyes or a, you know, any one of kind of those stores, they're not going to be the same ones that the NHL players have access to. And they sign contract negotiated, you know, obligation kind of stuff where they're not allowed to talk about it, and they won't. So you go, well, how could their stuff, you know, be so much more effective, and why would they be testing it on, you know, NHL players? What if some sort of outcome comes out of, you know, left field on this sort of thing? Well, the answer is they don't test this stuff on NHL players. Big Pharma, they go to third world countries with aspirations of performing in the Olympics or whatever, and they test it on them. You know, they spend decades testing different supplements and what sort of effects it has on them, on basically poor people from the third world, with the promise that I bet you they don't keep most of the time, that they'll make something of themselves and, you know, become Olympic athlete, or, you know, play for Team Brazil, for example, or something like that. Brazil would be a country that would be corrupt enough to just, you know, oh, we'll promise all these young guys, if they go through this program, that, you know, they're going to be on Team Brazil when they win the World Cup next time. And then we'll just turn around and, you know, it just never happens. Yeah, you know, teams would never trust just trying something new, especially not on a guy like Sidney Crosby or anything like that. And even the lower end guys, the minimum salary guys, they make over $500 grand a year. And, you know, most of them, they play like between 5 and 8 minutes a game. That's a lot of money for, you know, essentially, yeah, 8 minutes a game. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a workout during that 8 minutes and they're not doing anything, but it is just 8 minutes. And supposedly they have to do it 82 times a day, 82 times a year, a season. But, you know, a lot of the fourth liners don't actually play 82 games because they're either scratched, they're in the minors, they're injured, or whatever. Anyway, but, you know, that's a lot of money for players to be invested in, and they have to be able to perform, and they have to have the stamina to keep playing. And that's where, you know, good diet, plenty of exercise, set routine, learning how to use their energy in the best sort of way. I guess jet lag for when they're traveling to place, that plays an effect as well. Most certainly does. I don't know if they ever get used to it or not, or they just get some help along the way. But yeah, this Muscle Max advert I saw, it was really, like, it really hit me like a sack of potatoes that yes, NHL players cheat in that regard. They're not, you're just average guys who train and work out and do all the sort of stuff. They have a helping hand, and it's never changing scenario where they go, was it illegal or is it not, this, that, and the other. And because the NHL is a particularly rich organization, that kind of bad press just goes away. Anyway, I can see the flash on the back of my camera through my mirror, and it's telling me I'm low on battery, so I'm gonna have to cut this short. But I'm telling you, I can see the NHL players cheating in that regard. I don't particularly agree with it, but there's a lot of things I don't understand about the situation. I'm just saying, it's a whole different world, and a lot of people don't understand it, and if they did, they'd be a lot more interested in it. Learning the financial sector of the NHL, because who wants to be the chump who, doesn't make any money, lives in a cheap seat, and never accomplishes anything. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Have a good one.